What's up, guys? I'm LQ. This is the LQ Review, and I'm here to give you guys my review of Picard Episode 2. So, if you remember, I loved the first episode of Star Trek Picard. It felt like a continuation of The Next Generation, the 7 seasons of The Next Generation, and the 4 movies. It felt like a natural continuation of that. And I loved it, and I loved it, and I loved it. And I really liked Episode 2. I didn't like it nearly as much as Episode 1, though. Not nearly as much, but I still really liked it. One of the problems with Episode 2 is it fell into kind of a Trek trope that a lot of Star Trek episodes and even some of the movies have done. And that is, they get too talky. They get too talky. They tend to over-explain, or they tend to get into science fiction gobbledygook. And I thought it was ironic that at one point in this episode, Jean-Luc Picard says, "I don't like science fiction, I just never got into it," or something to that effect. And I found it ironic because this episode was incredibly science fiction-y as far as the narrative going into exposition. A very exposition-heavy episode, and just filled with Trek gobbledygook. And in this episode, that gobbledygook, it surrounded the Romulans, the secret faction within the Romulans. It involved technology that was able to kind of what they call it, Romulan forensic technology that was kind of able to reconstruct some crime scenes. Very techish, very gobbledygookish, and very just kind of over exposition stuff that didn't necessarily even need the exposition. So I felt that, especially the first half of this episode, it was very heavy in that. I really enjoyed the part in this episode where he goes to Starfleet, and we see clearly that his rift with Starfleet goes far deeper than what we learned in Episode 1. Like, he's borderline not welcome. Borderline not welcome by Starfleet. And he didn't get thrown out, but you get the sense that he was close to being thrown out of Starfleet headquarters. And this is classic Picard. Classic Picard. Insurrection Picard, right? Where Starfleet is not doing what I want them to do. They're not upholding to the standards that I'm holding them to, so I'm going to go out on my own. So he starts the process in this episode of building his team so he can go out in space and look for one of Data's daughters. And we were briefly introduced to one of his future crew members at the end of the episode. And I actually really liked the part where one of his Romulan friends that live at his vineyard told him, Riker, Worf, LaForge, why don't you go back to them? And Picard says they would do it in a heartbeat. I know they would do it in a heartbeat out of loyalty to me, but I don't want to put them in a position to get hurt. And that is, we can kind of look at it as a cop-out, as like they had to put that in there to explain why they're not in there. But I look at it as very character authentic to Picard. That's something that Picard would not ask his former crew members to do. Now, if they found out about it, yeah, I think they would jump on board. I know that he sees Riker at some point. My guess is it's going to be next episode. He sees Riker before he leaves. And I'm going to be interested in, does Riker try to go? Does Troy try to go? But, yeah, I liked that kind of callback. Also, this is spoilers, so we can talk about it here. I get the sense that Picard is dying. He talked to his doctor, and his doctor said, we can treat it, but it all ends the same way. So I feel like Picard has an ailment that is going to kill him. Now, that being said, Season 2 has been greenlit. We are going to see Star Trek Picard Season 2. So whatever it is, I get the sense it's not going to kill him fast. And in this timeline, he's supposed to be 90 years old, so he is nearing the end of his life. Even though he's a pretty healthy person. They even said your vitals are all good, but you've got this thing that it's going to end the same way no matter what we do about it. So I found that to be an interesting take on his character, an interesting kind of new obstacle to put in front of this character, and it reminds me of Logan. Again, it reminds me of Logan. I feel like we're going to see a lot of parallels between Logan and Picard. Let's talk about the Borg. All right, the Borg had a much heavier presence in this episode. We learned that Data's daughter, the Romulans, we learned that they are working on a Borg cube that has been decommissioned, but still has dangers. They said it still has dangers, and they are working to kind of. It looks like they're trying to backward engineer Borg technology, while at the same time they're trying to free drones from the collective, and we actually see a drone getting freed from the collective. Now, it wasn't clear whether or not that drone was alive or dead, but they were disconnecting drones from the collective, even though they made it clear that the cube had already been disconnected. As far as the Borg were concerned, this cube was already a graveyard. So I find the Borg stuff fascinating. They've always been one of my favorite Star Trek antagonists, and I hope to learn more about Borg culture throughout this episode, or throughout this series, and I think we're going to, especially since we know that Hugh is going to be involved, Seven of Nine is going to be involved. I think the Borg are going to continue to have a much greater presence. We also learned that Starfleet has been infiltrated by rogue Romulans, that there are evil Romulans who are part of this secret organization. I forget what they called it, the Daj or something like that, I don't remember, but the secret Romulan organization has infiltrated Starfleet, and they've got people in high places who can do some bad stuff. So, and we learned that the guy that has been sleeping with Data's daughter, he is one of the bad guys as well, or at least he's in a position to be a bad guy. He may not end up being a bad guy. I don't know. So, a lot of questions. This episode brought up a lot of questions. The first part of this episode had a lot of gobbledygook. I still really liked it a lot. It still felt like a continuation of The Next Generation, and that's what I'm looking for, is a continuation of The Next Generation. That's what I want it to be, that's what I want it to feel like, and that's what it is. So far anyways. But it wasn't nearly as good as the first episode. As far as action, there wasn't any. It was just very exposition heavy, and that's fine. We're going to have those. This wasn't a filler episode by any means. We're going to have those exposition episodes, and this was definitely one of those. But it didn't feel like anything happened. Even though they told a lot of story, it didn't feel like anything happened. So, not quite as good as episode 1. Still very good. Can't wait till next week to see episode 3. Have you been watching Picard? What did you think of episode 2? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your take on it. And guys, I really appreciate you being here at the LQ Review, where we get to talk about all the geeky and all the nerdy stuff we love to talk about. And nothing says geeky and nerdy quite as much as Star Trek, and I wear that badge with honor. So, with honor and pride. So, thank you so much for being here. And until next time, we'll see you later.